We're going to investigate light and colour and talk about some of the wavelengths of light that reach the eye and how we perceive the colour. The disc, 6-portion disc on the left, is the primary colours: red, green and blue, and in between each of those, yellow, cyan and magenta, the secondary colours. And visible light, sunlight, white light, it's all part of a longer set of wavelengths known as the electromagnetic spectrum. In fact, it's a tiny portion of that, and relative size of the wavelength, about that of a bacterium. So the visible part is made up of the colours of the rainbow, and then you've got the wavelengths of light that are involved in that visible region. 400 to about 750 nanometers, where a nanometer, you'd have 1 billion of them in 1 meter. And here's a wavelength from any point on the wave to an equivalent point on the next wave. So here we've got them at the top here. And the depth of them is going to be called the amplitude. And violet blue light has shorter wavelengths than the longer red wavelengths. And here you can see the diagram of the colours there and a wavelength of each. The violet shortest at the bottom and the red at the top. And interestingly, different temperatures of stars are going to be perceived at different colours. So our sun, a bit under 6,000 degrees Celsius, yellow. Very hot star, blue, and a bit cooler, 3,000 degrees Celsius, red. And then on the right, you've got a cross-section of the eye. Light will go in through the pupil and enter the whole of the eyeball, but the light is going to go to the inner edge of the back of the eye, and directly in from the cornea, the fovea, is the most sensitive part of the eye, which is really why we turn our head so that we see clearly from to get the light to go into the fovea. And in the retina, all around the retina, but including in the fovea as well, you've got photoreceptors, sort of your light receptors, rods and cones. The rods are for white light and the cones are for the coloured lights. The coloured wavelengths that are entering the eye, and they have photoreceptor cells, and there are 3 different types of cones that allow us to see red, blue and green light. And you've got the wavelengths here of the cones, the blue, the green and the red. The white light and the rod are different wavelengths. And on the left you've just got a diagrammatic representation of one of the cones. And what does the cone do? It's going to be receptive to red, to green, to blue. But when those colours overlap, you get the secondary colours of yellow, cyan and magenta. And then when all 3 colours overlap, you get white light. And on the right-hand side, you can see how the colours are broken down into even more sort of subset of colours. But the colour reaches our eyes, light, wavelengths, and how does that colour, how different objects actually have colour? And so we're going to look at these 6 ways: reflection, transmission, scattering, emission, refraction and interference. And starting with reflection, this is light that is reflected from opaque solid objects. And you can just pause to look at some of the ones that are included here. So if we look at a green ball and white light is hitting it, when we're observing that ball, the white light, most of the light is absorbed by the surface and green light is reflected. So the colour is, and the wavelength of light that is deflected is going to determine what colour it is, and the same is going to happen with leaves. And so for each of those, you can pause and read for each colour what is being reflected and look at what is being absorbed by the ball at the same time. And there's a definite curveball there to look carefully at, so pause and read. And then, out of interest, looking back at a green ball, green light hitting the eye, if blue light only were to hit the green ball, it would be absorbed. And the object ball here would appear to be black. So it's not just the colour that's reflected, yes it is, but it's what's happening, what types of wavelengths of light are hitting and maybe being absorbed by the ball. And then this is transmission for transparent materials, coloured glass, camera filters, sunglass lenses. And so the white light, the colours of the rainbow combined, going through, if you've got green glass, they filter out everything but green glass. And you can pause this to do an activity looking at different objects with different coloured filters. First one filter alone, two filters of a different colour, etc. So pause to work through that. And then here are some beads, two different collections here to look at. And the top left, they're in white light, then they're seen through a filter, and what has actually happened to them, and which ones look black and go back to the originals, which colours are being absorbed, which are not being reflected. And again, through a blue cellophane filter as well. So explain why the colours are changing with the different filters. And then sort of almost an application, looking at filter uses with cameras on Earth, and then what happens when you're looking on a different planet, and there's on Mars, and you can pause to read about Curiosity's Mars Cam. And then the third way that light reaches us is when light is scattered from clouds, from froth, from foam, from smoke, from colloidal solutions, which are solutions which have particles that are bigger than fully dissolved materials spread out. And the tiny green circle in a colloidal solution, you can actually see light being scattered through a colloidal solution. If it were a clear solution, light just goes straight through. And why is the sky blue? So you're getting scattering by gases and particles in the air. And then you can pause to read why the sky is red at sunset. And fourth method here, with emission of light, heated electrical elements, heated wires, and getting spectra. So incandescent, the light bulb there, and indeed LED lights, the sun rays emitting white light, fluorescent light, bottom left-hand corner, neon lights. So you've got glass with a low pressure gas trapped. Well, actually, the only ones that have neon in are sort of the orangey red ones. The blues and the other colours will have other gases at low pressure. Then you've got a hydrogen spectrum, which looks at the colours that are emitted as the electrons are excited by heating electric charge through the gas, and the emission spectrum when these excited electrons fall down. And see more detail here. On the left-hand side, you've got the coloured continuous spectrum, and without the black lines, that's what sunlight is. The hydrogen spectrum, the transitions of electrons in hydrogen absorb strongly in those two regions, a blue and an orangey red, and the helium a few more regions. Now, when those excited electrons drop down, they're going to emit the colours, and on the right you can see just the colours that are emitted from the electrons, which are dropping. And then refraction, dispersion of light in diamonds. The rainbows that you see are caused by sunlight being refracted through a water droplet and splitting up the light just like a glass prism would, the white light into the colours of the rainbow, the different wavelengths, spreading the different wavelengths of visible light, because violet with shorter wavelengths is going to be bent, refracted more than red. And here for a diamond, on the far right, you can see with the many facets how the light is being diffracted more than once, and they call that the fire of a diamond. You also have, with the white light, how much white light is reflected out at the right angles, and that gives the brilliance of a particular diamond. And last method we're going to look at is interference, which is involving very thin films, soap bubble, thin insect wings, the outer iridescence of a pearl, and oil films. And you can see here two different diagrams where the thin film, you're actually getting two reflected and indeed refracted when it goes into the particular medium and comes out, and so you are seeing the wavelengths of light slightly differently. And what you're often going to see here is the complementary colour as the refracted waves are inverted. And what we normally see is a combination of effects. So here's a Messier galaxy, which is a combination of X-ray, infrared, and indeed visible light representations, and when they're combined, you get that amazing one in the middle. Just out of interest here, a very short URL to write in. Discover the origins of the words that we use to describe colour. Really quite intriguing. So keep looking at light and looking at those 6 ways of us perceiving the colour, and how indeed we do with the physiology of our eyes.